So basically, I looked at him and I said, well, guess what, friend? You are on my land. And in being on my land, you don't have jurisdiction over me anymore. Do you understand me? And he looked back at me and he smiled and he said, prove it. And I said, he will. So ladies and gentlemen, what we have done is not only provable, but there's thousands and thousands of signatures on documents across this country that prove it. And we are going to submit that, and we are going to back it. And in doing so, we're going to do it in a fashion that is respectable, in a fashion that lets people know we are a peaceful people. There is no discord amongst the brethren. Romans 13:10. Read it. Romans 13:10. We are doing this in love because we are doing this for them. All those de facto agencies, they don't know. I didn't know until 2 years ago who I really was. This is not about arguing with police officers when they pull us over. They don't know, guys. So as these IDs that you're getting continue to go out, there is confusion. They're pulling you over. You must be responsible for your own actions. Don't be confrontational. This is an education you got to put in your mind. This corporate law enforcement needs to understand who you are. And when you speak respectfully to them, you will get respect back from them. Mind you, there will be some jerks out there. But I got to tell you something. We are not jerks. What we are doing, we're doing in love. I put my life on the line for my family and for you people in the Republic. Our phone calls are spiked all the time. I could hear the recordings in my phone calls sometimes. I don't say that to scare you, but I say that because this de facto government is at their end and they're scared. But when you're doing nothing wrong, there's nothing they can do. Stand in peace, stand in love, stand assured that you are standing on the law. There is nothing else. We are standing on the law. Now look, there's going to be a learning curve for all this stuff, and you're going to have to understand how not to acquiesce, which means let yourself go into their jurisdiction by signing these adhesion contracts with the U S corporation. You have to understand how to live free. It's not easy. I've got some general office stuff I got to tell you. The number on the back of the identification is not a customer service phone number, okay? It is only for the law enforcement and de facto court system. Don't call it with your questions, please. We are developing a questions queue phone number, and we're also putting more people, and we're also putting an FAQ on the homepage to get all your questions answered. This is going to be done in a few days. Just know that. We're working as hard and as quick as we can to make this happen. And we're also developing out our American Rangers program. That is going to be intense, and we'll talk about that way more in depth next week, okay? Thomas, are you still there? Do we have, okay, good. We got Ken on. Ken, do you have anything to add to what I've said thus far?
Sure.
Real quickly, hang on 1 second, Kelby. I just want to make sure you do know that we do have both lines conferenced together now, and we've got everybody back.
Good. Thank you. Thank you, Thomas. Go ahead, Ken.
Well, is there any particular areas of focus that you want me to elaborate on, or you just want me to, a few key points that I thought of while you were talking? Do you want me just to go for those?
Ken, I just needed a drink of water, and I needed the smartest guy I know to just elaborate on whatever he felt. So go ahead, buddy.
Okay, well, enjoy your drink of water. Well, one of the phrases people hear over and over again, and if you're new on this call or relatively new to this study and this whole topic, you will hear the phrase "on the land" over and over again. Kelby mentioned it, about the fact that the claim of sovereign right, Declaration of Sovereign Right, and so forth, and the metes and bounds reference of the description of the land was in fact a claiming of the land. The root of that is very important to understand, because if we go back in history before 1776, the only person who had a historical claim to the land was the sovereign. That was the king or the queen, whoever was sitting on the throne in any respective country, who had been crowned, usually if it was a Christian nation, by the Pope, and was given that absolute authority on the land. He would in turn, or she, but the crown was really the issuer, would grant land to members of the peerage, those of the noble aristocratic families. That would be a sovereign land grant that would be reciprocated because it was a contract, the highest type of contract known on the planet, where the landlord, the recipient of that grant, would give an oath of fealty. That means an oath of loyalty. And if we remember history, we remember all the movies we've seen, the landlords or the noblemen would give, with that oath of fealty or loyalty, they would supply the product of the land, production of the land. They would provide arms. They would provide men to defend the realm and all of that. So what we have to understand is that when we use the word jurisdiction, juris is the root of the word law. So when you hear jural society, de jure, jury, all of that is derived from the Latin word juris. Diction, of course, is the root of the word that means word. That's where the word dictionary comes from. So jurisdiction means the word of the law. But there's a deeper meaning to the word juris. It means an oath. And this goes back to that oath of fealty. So when a noble man, noble person gave an oath of fealty to the sovereign, to the king, in receipt of the land, he bound himself to that loyalty and to the requirements to maintain that loyalty. So never before in history were common individuals granted land in that capacity. But when the Declaration of Independence was issued in 1776, the men who signed that were declaring that they were, from that point forward, sovereigns on the land. And from that point forward, they had the right of, in effect, absolute representation or absolute authority within the context of what then followed over the next 10 to 15 years, establishing the sovereign capacity, the authority of the republics and the people who stood superior to the republics. They in turn came together and gave a very limited delegation of authority to a federal government or federal entity that was to provide certain functions, and very specific limited powers were granted. You read the Constitution, you will see what those powers were granted. If you read the Bill of Rights and you go to the 10th Amendment, you will see that they also included the statement that any right that is not delegated specifically to the federal government, to the United States, or to the states is reserved and retained by the people. So very simply, the name of the game over the next 100 years was to turn that upside down and inside out, and to effectively get the people to contract away their sovereign rights and to agree by contract to enter an oath of jurisdiction to a foreign entity. And Kelby talked about that with the formation of the corporation. If you want to look for your own satisfaction that this indeed exists, I'll give you two places to go.